first ever episode of the More Than a Game podcast. A podcast all about basketball, yes, but our hope is that we can dive deeper into topics and themes such as leadership and culture and people and a myriad of things. And today on the show we have Rob Beveridge, who's coached over 300 games in the National Basketball League, the NBL, as well as a number of other coaching achievements. It's a great honour to have him on the podcast today. Rob Beveridge, welcome to the More Than a Game podcast.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate the invite.
Great to have you here, mate. So if I can begin, yesterday we'll start on this. I didn't have this planned to begin with, but seeing it's happened, I thought we would touch on it, and that's the retirement of Kevin Lisch. I know he's a close mate of yours and you coached him for a number of years. What were your initial reactions when you heard the news?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Kev now. I think it was 11 or 12 years. You know, I was responsible for bringing him out and stuff like that. So, you know, I promised his parents when I was recruiting that I'd look after him like my son, and that's the relationship that we've built over the many years. Is you know, obviously there's an athlete-coach relationship, but it's a bit deeper than that. That you know, I guess I'm like his father figure. Australia, so sort of, you know, I knew the process. It was quite emotional yesterday. Like, I actually spoke to Kev, and you know, he was a little bit emotional, and I felt that way as well. That like one of your favourite players and favourite people, you know, his career's come to an end, but the enormous sense of pride. He's just one of the most beautiful human beings that you'd ever meet. You know, what you see is what you get with him. So, you know, he's a wonderful man, and he contributed so much to basketball. But you know, he'll continue to contribute off the court, and that's probably you know, something that I'm proud that you know, he's become such a great man.
Yeah, absolutely. We do know what a great guy he is. I know him personally as well. But in terms of a player, I reckon there's probably, in my opinion, no better combo guard that's graced the courts of the NBL. Point guard, shooting guard. He had it all, great shot. What kind of legacy do you think he'll leave behind?
I think that, you know, it was interesting. When I first recruited him to Perth, people want to get rid of him, you know, because he was a athletic. You know, there's always these expectations with imports that they're athletic, they're flamboyant, they're, you know, those types of people, and people were actually calling for, you know, his sacking early in the days, and it made no sense to me because, you know, he came through an incredible system with Rick Majerus. You know, I'd spoken to him, but probably what has separated him from a lot of the imports that have come in here is that, you know, his work ethic is as good as I've ever seen in my entire life. His professionalism, the way he treated himself on and off the court, you know, his preparation was methodical, was meticulous with everything he did. So, you know, he really epitomised a true champion. And, you know, the way he played the game offensively and defensively was he gave absolute more than 100% every single time he was on the floor. And that's probably what's almost, you know, I wouldn't say it's cost his career, but you know, for the way he plays the game is the way he trains. And you know, when your body goes through that for such a long period of time, sooner or later something's going to happen. And you know, he's had, you know, a few injuries and obviously a career-ending injury now, and that was because of the way he treated every single practice, every single game. It just probably wore him down.
Absolutely. He's had a great career, nonetheless. But I was going to ask this later on, but since you touched on it, the importance of work ethic and the kind of player he was in that regard, no doubt brought that to training sessions as well. I was talking to Jeff Van Groningen previously about the importance of finding the right coach for an organisation that's going to buy into the vision or the purpose of the organisation. And he spoke about getting the right fit in terms of coach, but in terms of coaching, I know you've coached 300 plus games in the NBL, coached Australia to gold at the 2003 World Junior Championships. You coached at the Commonwealth Games, and we'll get into some of those in a moment. But in terms of getting the right players as to fit in or to buy in with the organisation, how important is, first of all, the character of the player? Do you take that over playing ability, or is the playing ability paramount to you?
Yeah, look, that's I know we're going to talk about the book that I've written, but part one of the chapters that we specifically talk about, is the culture of the organisation, like the workplace. Is it positive? Is it negative? All of those types of things. So you've got to have a great environment, a great organisational structure. That allows athletes, coaches, everybody to do their job, and that's a major component. But when I look at athletes, the character of the player is paramount. That's the thing. That when I recruit players, like I get sent. Literally, when I'm recruiting, hundreds of players that get sent me from agents. And at the end of the day, like all the players you're looking at, they're really good players. They're professional players. Yeah. So what separates the good from the great is actually the character of that person. Are they trustworthy? Are they honest? Are they hardworking? Are they self-motivated? All of those things is what I actually look at, and how do they think? What type of person are they? I want to know about: are you married? You got boyfriends or family, or if you've got tattoos? What's your thoughts on this and that and stuff like that? So probably do my homework more about the person, their family, their background. I speak to their college coaches. I speak to their former teammates to get a real good understanding of who the people are, because so I've been in the league a very, very long time. You don't always get it right. There's no doubt about that. Sometimes you get it wrong. It just doesn't fit. But you definitely are looking for people that have got high character, great core values, those types of things, because that there allows you as a coach to be able to coach them. You understand that ego, that you understand what makes them tick, and the character of the player is just paramount. And that's what I always try and do when I'm recruiting a player. And that was the thing with Kev Lisch was I went directly to Chris Harriman, who was one of my former players at St. Louis. And he knows me, he played for me, he knew you're the type of player. And he said, "Hey, I've got a guy for you, Kevin Lisch." And that's good enough for me. I don't have to go and search videos and listen to the BS that comes out from agents and people like that. So you always got to do your homework on the players. And in my opinion, character is one of the biggest ones that I'm after.
Yeah, that's great, mate. Yeah, the reason I asked that question is I remember an interview with Brian Goorjian probably about 10 years ago now, when he was asked, out of everyone that he's coached, who was his favourite player. I think it was the quote, favourite player he's ever coached. And his answer, surprisingly, was BJ Carter. And the reason for that was because of BJ's work ethic and the kind of guy that he was. And I had a bit to do with BJ at Sutherland Sharks and had a season playing alongside of him, which is a great experience. But just to see his work ethic, but a kid that never made state teams, was told he was too short, too skinny. There's probably a lot of kids out there that have been told that, but yet he still made a good career in the NBL and gave it a red hot crack. So, have you had any players that fit that sort of bill that people may not have known about or realised what a great person they were to have around the team?
Yeah, I said I've been doing it so long, but there's a lot of people that are actually misunderstood at times. People on the outside might look at these people and go, "Oh, geez, he's not very good. He's not that." But I call them like glue types of players. The players like a Brad Robbins. That is a Kevin White. Cameron Tovey. A lot of those players that are behind the scenes, that they're the glue of a team, that give their heart and soul, and they hold their teammates accountable and things like that. So, I mean, I've had some really, really good players, and obviously the Damien Martins and the Kirk Pennies and Kev and all that, but they fit that characteristic. But you've got to have somebody that brings that X factor. And I look at other teams, and I look at somebody like a Dylan Boucher, or a Mika Vacona. Those guys have been in the league for such a long period of time, and they weren't superstars, but when you speak to their coaches and players that I've mentioned, they're just quality human beings that just give their heart and soul to the team. Tyson Demos, at Wollongong, his career was over because of injuries and stuff like that. But he was so great to coach because of his attitude and his work ethic and holding his teammates accountable. And he wouldn't do anything without him doing it himself. He wouldn't ask anybody to do anything. So there are those types of players that you look back upon, and they were pleasures to coach. They were just, you turn up to work and you're coaching really good people.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great, mate. You mentioned the book, and we'll get a picture of it up here. Let me just. So, When Winning Matters, the book, you dive into. In the book, you dive into transforming cultures, fostering success, creating or building winning environments, and you've done that with Stephen Bird. My question, first of all, is how did this come about, for starters?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things that it's something that I've wanted to do for a long period of time. I look back and go, I've been doing this 28 years as a professional coach. I sort of pinch myself at times how lucky I am as a basketball coach. I mean, I do something that, for a living that you can only dream of. There's not many jobs and stuff like that. I've been to Olympic Games. I've been to World Championships, World Cups, Com Games, the whole lot. I've had a wonderful career, and what I'm now trying to pass on, I'm at a stage of my life that, winning championships or, crowds, that doesn't really mean that much to me anymore, not in a disrespectful way. I think that I'm in a position now that you put back, and I'm very, very big on mentoring, and I've learnt so much over my journey working with some incredible people, incredible programs. So the book's about what we've learned. So Dr. Stephen Bird, my background with him is I came across him when I was in WA. And we hit it off straight away and employed him as a consultant with the Perth Wildcats. That, he's a specialist in sports science and strength conditioning, and particularly in recovery and things like that. He's a world authority, and he's like my right hand man, and very like minded. We only want the best for others, so we're both like mentors. Yeah. So we got together and said, hey, let's talk about our 25, 30 years of high performance coaching, and we're just trying to pass on what we believe are the secrets, the success to building programs. So it covers everything for obviously being a coach. I cover a lot of coaching. I don't know if issues is the word, but things that people really got to know about in professional sport, and Birdie's background in the sports sciences and the psychology and things like that. So we really delve into successful organisations, what they do, but also other organisations of what they don't do, and show this is what happens in the real world. This is what happens. I'm lucky that I've coached over 20 players in the NBA. What do they do? What does Andrew Bogut do? What does David Anderson do? What does those types of players? The great coaches, Phil Jackson, Mike Krzyzewski, Greg Popovich. So really, we're passing on an enormous amount of information about what we've learned in the real world sporting environment, and passing it on to athletes, coaches, and administrators.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just a quick question around success. You may touch on the book, I don't know, but for me, success is more than winning. There's a lot more to success that people don't realise. So in your words, just briefly, what is success to you? What does that look like exactly?
Yeah, it's to me, it's making a difference. A lot of people think success is winning a championship, but when I look at organisations that have won 3 championships in a row and then folded. It's happened a number of times. Yeah. It happens. So, really, is that success because you win a championship? Yeah. I think that, to me, success is the influence that I, or the program, the organisation has on the people within the organisation. I'm very community orientated. So part of the focus is, hey, we're role models for our society. So our success is, how can we influence other people in a positive way? From a coaching perspective, how can I influence an athlete to become great people, to become a great player, to be the best that they can be? I build a successful program. Right now, I mean, I've lost more championships than I've won.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, "Oh, you're so successful," and going, "Well, I'm successful because I invest in my players, my staff. I only want the best, and that's what success is for me, rather than being on a podium and having a championship or things like that. That's only the cream. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. I've been there, done that, but it's watching people. Like it's an enormous pride to see something like Kevin Lisch come out of college as a rookie to where he is. That's to me success. Damien Martin from a 16-year-old kid to where he is. To watch all these players that you've been influential part of their life. That's what I consider to be success, rather than you lost a championship or you lost that. It's influences that you have on other people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, mate. I'll come to the Perth Wildcats in a second because, based on what you said, they're an organisation that have been successful on the court, but off the court as well, and done it for so many years. But just on your point about building other players and encouraging them along, you started off with the West Sydney Razorbacks. That was your first gig in the NBL, is that correct? Or
Yeah.
So, so maybe you came into that team, and it was a bit of a tumultuous sort of start for you in the NBL. The Razorbacks are a great, successful club. They're coming off a few lean seasons there, and just to see this is what I admire about you from the outset. You invested in those players, you got the best out of them, and you mentioned Damien Martin. He was on your team back then, believe it or not, a Razorback. But he's come through and done some great things in the sport. What was your experience back then with the Razorbacks, and what was it like in your first crack at the NBL?
Yeah, it was something that I always wanted to do, was coach in the NBL. But at the same time, it was important for me to get in the right job. That I'm a rookie coach. This is a mistake that a lot of coaches do, is that they go for the top end jobs, stuff like that. Now, I actually had an opportunity to look at Adelaide in the early days and also Perth. They were superpowers. They were powerhouse. If I had gone into that environment, I would have been eaten up and swallowed and spat out.
Wow.
It's simply that. And that's something that I realised, is that you got to earn your stripes. You got to develop yourself as a coach. And I was based in Sydney, head coach of the New South Wales Institute of Sport. I knew the people involved with West Sydney, with Phil Hudson and Robbie Cadee. So I knew I had people around me to support me, even though they were the worst team in the league at the time. They went through a whole lot of issues and stuff like that. It was a good stepping stone for me as a coach to be able to develop my personality, my philosophy on coaching. And right from the very start, it's always been about, okay, if we're going to build a program, well, you start at the bottom and you work your way up. And it was all about athlete-centered program. Let's get great people, good athletes. Let's invest in them and develop them. Hence why you go after the Matty Knights and the Julian Kazoos and Damien Martin, and you build a program around it. So that was my start. That I realised that getting the NBL, if I went to a higher team, I wouldn't have been able to handle the media, the expectation that you had to win a championship, you had to do this. So it was an incredible start for me. And to me, I think we won 10 games in our first year, but it was a successful year because we blooded so many young players. So that there I looked at, it was pretty successful, although we're maybe 10-18 or 10-20 for the season.
Yeah, that's right. That's good to hear. Despite the Kings jersey in the background, I was actually a Razorbacks fan growing up, and I hate to bring it up, but one thing that happened just prior to the 2008 season was the Sydney Kings folded. Obviously, their owner went bankrupt, and that's a whole other story. But the Razorbacks were left as the only Sydney team in the NBL, and they made the choice to become the Sydney Spirit. So for me, growing up, it was a bit of a disappointing move, and it didn't seem the experiment to work all that well. I guess the evidence of that was that you took a game to the entertainment centre and only about 800, 900 people turned up. And for me, that sort of reflected where the league was at the time. But hindsight's a great thing. If you had your time again, would you encourage the organisation to go down that path, or you think it was a mistake or something that was out of your control?
Massive mistake. I mean, you know, I was extremely proud to be coach of West Sydney Razorbacks.
Yeah.
You know, like it was a great club, and probably the end of the Razorbacks was when the Kings folded.
Yeah.
Because the new owner came in and all good intentions, but I knew it was going to be a failure because at the end of the day, the rivalry between West Sydney and the Sydney Kings was fantastic.
Yeah,
the cross city rivalry was so good. And then a decision was made. The Kings have gone. Let's try and get the monopoly of the market by becoming the spirit of Sydney. That was the theory behind it. Yeah. But in my mind, again, dumb move because one, you're never going to have Sydney Kings supporters want to support West Sydney. That's and right. Then by changing the name from the West Sydney Razorbacks to the Spirit, we segregated ourselves from our own fans. So it was always going to be, in my mind, complete failure. But at the end of the day, I'm only a coach. What would I know?
Exactly.
I'd only been in Sydney for 10 years prior to coming in. So I understood the landscape, and I thought at the time it wasn't a good move, and it probably proved that it wasn't the right thing to do because obviously, we're never going to get the fans from Sydney Kings anyway. That's just the way it is. Almost trying to say, let's join the Lakers and the Clippers together. Yeah, and change. Right. Well, it's not going to happen. It just doesn't happen. And I think you've got to look at the sociology of the mindset of people. And as soon as we change the name, we ostracise ourselves from our own fans. And, when you don't get bums on seats and, you lose sponsors and things like that, things went pear-shaped. And unfortunately, I was in that the head coach of the team when it went into receivership. The global financial crisis occurred. The owner did a runner. He just disappeared in club faults. So it was an incredibly tough experience. But in hindsight, you learn these things. But at the time, I thought, I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, in that time as well, Andrew Bogut stepped in, put some of his own money into the club, and that's one thing I love about Bogues is his interest in the sport. He's passionate about the sport. He's not in it for self-interest. And he put his own money into the club. You and Andrew go way back to the 2003 Junior World Championships, where you won the gold medal. One of the greatest moments in Australian basketball history, in my opinion, seeing those young kids come through and win gold. First and foremost, what was that experience like, being a part of that team? And let me just run through some of the players in the team. We said Andrew Bogut, Damian Martin, Brad Newley, Alex Marich, Aaron Bruce, Stephen Markovic. It was a pretty loaded team. What was it like? But also, did you realise or see back then that these players were going to become the players that they are today?
Oh, look, that was a special group. There's no doubt. And, as the head coach of that team, it was one of those things that we were a true team. We knew who the best player was. We knew who the alpha dog was. And that's the thing when you're building a team, you've got to know what your role is. So we had tremendous leadership in Damian Martin and Reece Carter and Brad Roberts. Like those guys were your engine room. You got your superstar in Bogut. But the thing with Bogut, he although we knew he was the alpha dog, he was about team. He knew what his job was to do, and that all I had to do was try and get all their egos, leave them at the door. Hey, we're doing this together. It's one of those things when you represent Australia, you put that green and gold on. You got the your emblem on your chest. It's we don't take a backward step. Like leave your ego at the door. And I think that's something that why in Australia we're actually a world power is because we do leave our egos at the door. In my experience, as soon as it becomes about you, that's when you get all your team chemistry issues and stuff like that. And that was the beauty of coaching that team was that we had everybody knew what their role was, and they were the best in that role, and they accepted that. Bogut knew he had to score. A lot of people don't realise back in the day he averaged like 28 points, 17 rebounds. He was a scorer. That was his job. and I look at his career, how he's evolved as a player. It sums it up going to Golden State Warriors. He hardly ever scored. All he did was an exceptional passer, screener. That's what he did, because he knew that he had to do what he had to do to get the ball to Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, his teammates. So really, we had the best role players, there, and they were all exceptionally good at what they did in their role. And every single one of those players in that team went on to play professional basketball. A lot of them at a very, very high level. So it was very special.
Yeah, would have been an incredible ride to be on, and to stand on that podium at the end of it. You touched on about how we punch above our weight at international level. Just quickly about if you can talk about how we're perceived out there in the world as a basketball nation. Like, we've done so well for so long, and we've got such a fruitful history, Australian basketball. What is the perceptions out there about us? And just on that, can we win the gold medal next year now at the Tokyo Games, do you think?
Yeah, look, it's for us to get to this position. I think we're number 3 in the world at the moment. We're definitely in the top 4 in the world. I looked at the rankings not long ago, and that took a long time to get there. My background is going back 25 years ago, that we used to go on a lot of professional development tours to the USA, to Russia, Spain, Serbia, Slovenia, Lithuania. We did all this stuff, that we went into those countries to find out, what are they good at? What do they really do? And we had to identify, us as a country, we can't be like the USA, a running team. We can't be a half-court team like the Europeans, because they're too good. So we developed our own hybrid game, but we also developed a personality that it was never take a backward step. And the perception is, because I've coached up in Asia and the Middle East and USA and all those places, there's actually a perception that we're dirty. A lot of people, those Aussies, they're dirty. We aren't dirty. We're hard-nosed. And I think that's the difference, is that we collectively as a team, we know who we are, we know what our personality is, and that they're non-negotiable behaviours. That this is what we're going to. This is how we're going to play the game. Fast forward, for us to win a gold medal, players got to leave their egos at the door.
That's right.
Simple as that. I think that there's exceptionally talented players, and if we can get, all that talent all on the same page, playing for each other, we can win a gold medal. I truly believe that, but it's like the coaching staff to be able to mould the egos of the players. And when I say about that, the players, they're good people. They only want the best. They're not going to be. That's just the Australian way. But it's going to be the biggest challenge is to have every single one of those players understand what their role is and fit into a team that's going to win a gold medal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hope they do. Got to wait another year for it, but let's see how we go. And hopefully Bogut's around. That's my hope and my prayer. Just going back to Damien Martin, when the Razorbacks folded, it was actually a silver lining in some ways for you, because you ended up at the Perth Wildcats and had your crack there and were very successful. First and foremost, we talked about organisations and successful organisations at the top of this podcast. What makes the Perth Wildcats so good? What do they put in place that they continue to churn out quality teams that compete and again, make the finals?
Yeah, look, that was a great thing to be able to go through. That I cut my teeth in with the West Sydney Razorbacks / Sydney, and I guess the experiences that I had dealing with a team that's folded, it accelerated my getting about how we do things. So, for example, when we folded, so when the owner walked out, we only had 2 or 3 months to go in the season. That our crowds actually, we were a losing team. I think we only won 1 game in the last 10 games because we lost 4 players. We bring people out of state league just to make nothing. And they increased because we had great people. And the community actually backed us. So I always knew that community was a key to the success of the team.
Yeah.
That people could relate to these people. When it goes back to the character of the people, they've got to be good people that people can relate to. So then when I go over to Perth, when I was in Perth, that was part of the, my business plan or mission statement was going, okay, right now the Perth Wildcats have gone 10 years in a row. 10 years they went without a championship. So they've made playoffs.
Right.
But there were 8 of the 12 teams made the playoffs. So it was actually a lot easier back in those days to make playoffs than it is today. Back there was 60, 70% of the teams made the playoffs. That's no disrespect to anybody, but the point when I came into the Wildcats, saying, okay, we got to change the mindset around what we're doing. We're not going to, like the Perth Wildcats are arguably the richest club in the league. So they've always had that ability to go and recruit the best players.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do was recruit the best players with the best attitude. So I had that ability with the club to be able to go out and recruit, the Damien Martins and bring back Catalini and all these people that I consider winners. Bringing Kevin Lisch, like bringing these people, Jesse Wagstaff, Cameron Tovey, like all of those people have got the right mindset to do that. And that was probably one of the biggest turning points for their club, was that we said, okay, we're not going to go out and open the checkbook and just go and buy all the players, because it doesn't work. It's the reality is, from a sustainability, it doesn't work. Teams fold. And you look at teams in the past that have won championships, that you go out and buy all the best players to win a championship, they fold. So to me, I'm going, that's not the answer. It's about building a sustainable program. So my theory was, okay, let's get the best young talent coming through. I was the head coach of the national junior team. I've got relationships with the players. I proved that I care for them. I want them to be best. So we put them in a really good environment. So the way I sold it to the Wildcats was, stop investing in all the players, invest in building infrastructure. Let's get good assistant coaches. Let's get strength and conditioning. Let's get doctors, physios, massage, nutrition, like a whole package around these players, and nurture them and make them great. So that there was a massive key with that organisation of bringing great people in. And Damien Martin, one of the all-time great leaders, 6 championships. Jesse Wagstaff, 6 championships. You bring in people like Greg Hire. When we're talking about players before, Greg Hire is one of the main people responsible for winning championships. He's far from being a very good player, but my God, what a hard ass! The way he treated himself, his body, everything he did. So that's part of the formula. So really, it was a case of bringing players that are very talented. There's no question. Nurture them, look after them. We built a holistic approach that we helped them off the court with their studies. We sent them to university. They worked with the employees. There was even at one stage when I changed the philosophy of going, okay, you've got to go to university, you've got to work, but some people accused me of cheating because we were doing that. Well, no, we're actually investing in the people from a holistic approach. When you do that, when you care more for your players, they're going to put back. So I think that we got them into the community. You get out to the schools, get out to the hospitals, get into the prisons, get into the associations, and because they're great people, they can communicate with the. It's organic. It just grows. Just grows. What we had was great people that became role models. And people support that. In Perth, the great thing about Perth is so far away from everything, and you'll find with all of their sporting teams is they have great support because it's an us versus them mentality. They're from WA. They don't like people from the east. That's reality. It took us a while to get there, and I became adopted. That I was over there, and it's the same with a lot of the players. When they go over there, they get looked after so well. Great facilities, great organisation. That's why people stay, and that comes back to part of my book about the culture of a club, and the positive environment, how you support each other. That's why the players stay there. There's really not that many that do leave. I mean, some do leave. It's part of the business. But when you keep your core group together for a long period of time, that's what's sustainable. And that's why they're so good.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who are watching, if you've never been to a Wildcats game or home game, get over there. I had the opportunity last year, 2 years ago now, and it's a phenomenal experience. It feels like an NBA game. That's how good it is, I reckon. So the atmosphere and that. You touched on the players, moving now to the Laura Hawks, which was your last gig. You sort of nurtured a similar sort of group. They were hard-nosed and gave it a good crack and ended up resulting in making the 2017 Grand Final series. No doubt that was another highlight in your life. What was that like, making that final series?
Yeah, look, I think it was 2014. My contract was up, and I made a decision that I was going to go to bigger things, and ended up in China coaching over there, and that was an eye opener. It was just a different beast and stuff like that. So I only did the one season there, and then when I came back, that's when there was an opportunity at Wollongong. And it was one of those things, I don't know if I want to get back in the league, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it was pretty much, the family said, hey, Dad, this is what you do. This is who you are. So I took on that role. And again, it was the same philosophy as that when I went to Perth, is I know how to build a winning model, and it was about people. So one of the first things I did was when I took the job, I said to him, look, I'll do a 6-month contract only. That's it. Let's just see if we can get the club going again. And the first phone call was Kevin Lisch. Kev was overseas at the time. I rang him up and said, hey, I've just taken the job. What are you doing? Do you want to come back? And, to my surprise, he said, I'd love to. Like he's got a young family now, tough on Rach and Benji. Sophia was on the way. So it was like, I'm going to come back. And so that was one of the big keystones for me was that. And then, my background with AJ Ogilvy, I coached him for a very long time as well. He was, great opportunity there. And then Turkey fell in my lap. Like he rang me. He rang me from Turkey, I believe, just saying, hey, I'm really close friends with, I knew Kirk, but he said, no, I've heard some great things. I want to come and play.
Wow.
Similar situation that he wanted to get out of the environment he was into a good environment. And so really, I call them the big three at that stage. But then you got great people around you, like the Tyson D. Mosses, Oscar Formans, Timmy Conrad, Larry Davidson, those types of players. So, I brought in some of my people, and we just sort of changed the mentality, and we had a lot of fun. We worked our asses off. We had some really good, competitive. Like the work ethic of those players was off the charts. And they went from, I think we went from 6 wins the previous year to 17 wins in a semi-final, and then the next year, making a grand final, it was like a Cinderella story. It was a lot of fun. It was amazing experience. And then then a whole lot of changes happened. We sort of went downhill from there.
Yeah. So without going into too much of what happened, we see the plight of the Laura Hawks at the moment, looking for owners, not in a great position. One of the clubs that haven't really grown as the league has grown. Most other clubs have really sort of built their fan base and continued to grow as the league has grown, but the Hawks still don't seem to be able to get that level of support. Is there another business model that needs to be implemented there? I feel like they probably rely too much on sponsorship from the local community, which is great, but is there something they can, in your opinion, is there something better they could be doing to be able to get high level support in there and sponsorship and really see that place start to grow? Because we do want the Laura Hawks in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I love the club. I love the community. Just fantastic. It's a different beast.
Yeah.
Now that's the thing. Worked in the corporate teams like the Perth, and to come into a regional community, probably the biggest strength that is part of this community is they back each other. They are the community. They're small businesses that want to get behind, and that was one of the reasons why I did come back here for that. The issue that I probably found was that the previous owners, they weren't Illawarra people. They were Sydney people that, were sports fans, or they wanted to be involved, and they bought the club. But I just don't feel that they had any real feel for the actual community. That was probably something there. So I think the model going forward, you got to have a community owner. And it can't be just one person. I've always said, because we've only had one owner beforehand, another owner. Like I've seen it all the time. One ownership doesn't work unless you're a Jack Bendat. That's a different beast. And it's a different model there. But in this community, you got to have probably multiple owners, maybe two or three maximum. But it's got to be a locally owned, passionate person, and they've got that person right now. In their backyard in Tory Lavelle. He was our major sponsor for 4 or 5 years. Well, the 4 years I was there, he was our major sponsor. So he's been there forever. He owns the Wollongong Bulls. He's a local businessman that wants to invest back in his community. So I think that's the answer there. Now you can back it up, with whether LaMelo Ball or other parties get involved. So I think you've got to have that. But I think the community is probably the biggest thing. Another thing that needs to be done are facilities. It's hard to recruit players when you don't have the same facilities as a Perth or a Melbourne or whatever it might be. So that's another area that needs to be done is better training facilities. It's hard when you bring an import in. I love the Snake Pit. It's one of the oldest buildings in all of Australia. Great cork, great back. Like, it's good, but it's an old shed.
It is.
So there's a stigma involved with that as well. And, people, going, oh, yeah, but we're the Illawarra, we're a blue collar town, and, we put the hard hat on, away we go. That's great. They're words. I agree. You've got to work hard. But you've got to be a good work environment as well. So I think that's really important. You've got to have a very strong board. In my 4 years, there was no board. No board. No meetings, no accountability. Wow. That there is a downfall of a club when you don't have a collaborative approach where, again, I look at Perth, great board, very, very experienced, very passionate, experts in their field, monthly meetings, accountability. Accountability is paramount. And then you go to a smaller organisation, you just got to downscale it, but you still got to have some great leadership. Where it comes from the ownership group to a board, that are experts in their field, down to the coaches, down to the assistant coaches, the medical staff. Like, everybody's got to have their role and responsibility. That's what Illawarra got to do a better job of getting a really strong management group in place that's supported by the ownership group. I think that's a real key.
Absolutely. Let's hope that they can stay around, stay afloat, and get that sorted. We hope the Hawks are still around. But last question for you, mate. I know you're passionate about coaching pathways in Australia, and I want to touch on the journey of a former teammate of mine who I know you know well, Sam Gruggan. He was there at the Razorbacks, and I was just really encouraged to see his coaching journey. You probably won't mind me saying his name on this podcast, but just seeing him when we're playing together, cutting his teeth at the junior representative ranks, up to the state level, the representative programs, and then got his crack with an NBL team with the Townsville Crocs, albeit as an assistant coach, and they folded after his one and only year there. But as I look at and reflect on Sam's journey, there's a lot of hard work involved in being a coach, and getting to that level, you have to have a lot of resilience. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you agree with that. What do you think, or do you feel the coaching pathways are adequate in Australia? And if they are, what advice do you give to young coaches who are trying to take their coaching to the next level?
Yeah, Well, Sammy, I brought in as one of my apprentice coaches back in the West Sydney days, and I love him. I'm still a mentor to this day. He drives me up the wall at times.
No, surely not.
Yeah, that's good old Sammy. But it's the pathway is really important, and what I'm finding is that a lot of the coaches want to try and get up to the highest level as fast as they can without serving their apprenticeship. So I think the pathway is really important. That before I got a head coaching position, I think it was like 15, 16 years before I actually became a head coach. Some people want to be head coach in 2 years. You got to cut your teeth. You got to understand how everything works. So you got to understand to teach kids the fundamentals of under 12s, under 14s, 16s, 18s at different age groups. You got to teach fundamentals. Then you got to teach team strategy, and you got to teach a whole lot of things. But coaching is dealing with parents, it's dealing with the media, it's dealing with the abuse of social media, the intimidation, the bullying, the harassment, all of those things that coaches have got to get through. So you've got to actually probably be exposed to it to gain experience from that. So you've got to be a head coach for state team. You have to do that. And I've seen people that have just jumped out of university and go straight into a professional sport and going, they're not going to make it. Or even former players that have been great players, they jump into a coaching position and they fail. It's because they don't have the actual hands-on experience of dealing with a lot of other issues, and their expectations might be a lot higher than that. So I think you've got to, I always talk about serve your apprenticeship, work your way up the food chain by coaching both men and women, vice versa. It doesn't matter. You've got to do both. So you understand people. Everything's about developing relationships and understanding how things work. So it's more than just learning about what I call the X's and O's. There's so much more, the emotional intelligence side of things. You've got to understand people and situations and things like that. So, I'm sort of waffling here, but the pathway is, obviously coach juniors domestically, males, females, do both, different personalities. Coach, assistant coach, learn how to cut up videotape, understand strength conditioning. Like I went to university and did 2 degrees to understand, psychology and things like that. Learn about how to teach, communication, all of those things there. Dealing with a whole lot of different things. And that takes time. And you've got to be, prepared to make the sacrifice and commitment to travel, to move jobs, to work with great mentors. And that's the position I'm at in my career, is that, I've achieved a lot. Well, now it's time to, I want to be that mentor. I want to be that guy. Hey, I've got this issue. That's sort of where I'm at. And people like Sammy is on his way up. He's doing a tremendous job with what he's doing, and to me, he's got to get back in the NBL. As an assistant coach somewhere. The problem in our country is it's just not enough jobs. There's only 9 teams. There's hardly any jobs. So there's so much more we can do, particularly from a junior level. And where Sammy's at the moment, is the SPP and PP program of developing our elite juniors. He's doing a great job of that. But obviously somebody like him is the next step. We'll be back in the NBL, national junior teams as well. Then work your way up there.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Well, there you go, young coaches. Hopefully there's some good advice for you. Great advice. We'll leave it there, mate. But just before we finish up, any chance we'll see you back in the NBL anytime soon?
To be honest, I don't think so. I'll never ever say never, but it's got to be the right opportunity with the right people of some great organisations. And you go through a lot of struggles in life as a coach, and right now I've achieved a lot. Never say never, but right now, if I'm looking at the short term, I can't really see that happening at this stage.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Well, I for one hope we do see you in the NBL before long, but wish you all the best, mate, and thank you for your time today on the More Than a Game podcast. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, Dan. Much appreciated.